Welcome back into K-State Online. I'm Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway here with some exciting news for everybody that was getting impatient that Jaden Rowe wasn't enough. K-State has added to their transfer portal haul on this, second full week of transfer portal action underway. And the Wildcats are doing it at a position that they absolutely wanted to add guys at, kind of change up the way that the room looked. And that's at wide receiver. And it comes in the form of a guy that will be a true junior next year. Just finished up his second season at Purdue. It is Jaron Tibbs, a receiver who had decent numbers this year, 25 catches, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns in Purdue's offense. And obviously, Purdue struggled as a team this season, but
that's putting it lightly.
Yeah, that's the friendly way to put it. I mean, their head coach got fired after his second season there. But if you go and look, and he had Hudson Card throwing to him, the former Texas quarterback. But he ends up being the second leading receiver in terms of catches, third in terms of yards. And there were plenty of things to like, and obviously other teams did, because K-State wins out for his services over these are the other Power 4 offers that we know that he had: Wake Forest, Louisville, Minnesota, Georgia Tech, Southern Cal, so USC, Rutgers, and Arkansas are the notables in addition to K-State. And the Wildcats land Jaron Tibbs right here. So, Drew, what is your perspective and take on what K-State is getting here?
Yeah, it's a bigger body receiver at 6'3" that K-State, I think, really needed. I mean, you probably only had one of those guys last year, and Trey Spivey, and now he is in the transfer portal himself. So you could say that this is just like a Trey Spivey replacement, and I don't think that you would necessarily be wrong. Purdue was bad on a lot of levels this season. I mean, they were 1-11, definitely the worst Power 4 team in college football. You said that he was the third leading receiver in yards at Purdue, which is true. They're the number one receiver at Purdue, had 685 yards and had 51 catches. That was actually their tight end. So Purdue just had a lot of offensive struggles. I think that they fired their offensive coordinator mid-season, then head coach got fired during or after the season. So they were just kind of a mess in general. But Tibbs will be an older guy in a room that is being almost completely flipped. I mean, you look, and Tibbs will be the fifth wide receiver in this K-State recruiting class of 2025, and is not going to be the last one added either. And this is a room that really only has Jace Brown as the guy that has legitimate production in college. And I think that adding somebody that is a little bit older, has a little bit more size, makes sense. And he's the guy that can be a wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 and won't be expected to do a whole lot besides just go and get the contested catches like he did. Because I think they have a proven guy in Jace Brown that can take the next step, because he has the most yards that a K-State receiver's had since 2014. And Tibbs will just be like a complementary piece to that. And a guy where K-State has struggled a little bit in the red zone, not just running, but throwing to a receiver. And Tibbs can go up and make contested catches at his size. And that's really his skill, is going up and being able to go and get it. 25 catches, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns this season. And I think that with how bad Purdue was this year, to see the amount of suitors that he had kind of shows that a lot of teams saw something in Jaron Tibbs. And I think that is something that needs to be pointed out.
Yeah, you look at the offense for Purdue this season, and you see that they threw for about 2,200 yards this year. K-State threw for 2,500, and we talked Tibbs. He's the third leading receiver on Purdue. If you take his numbers and put him on K-State, he's the third leading receiver at K-State. So, if you're kind of breaking down what the shares of everything are there, K-State had a little bit more to go around. You would think that opportunity will be there next year. And I know that also people like myself have harped for a while about the size of K-State receivers. And this is at 6'3", going to be one of the bigger guys in terms of height that K-State can throw out there. And I think that is significant for them, because having a size advantage is never a bad thing as a receiver. I think if you go and look around, I did it last year at one point, and I was kind of comparing the different heights of all the receivers in the Big 12, and it makes a difference. At the end of the day, it's better to have a height advantage than to not have one. And K-State receivers really hadn't had that, and Jace Brown can get away with it. And it's not like Jace Brown is tiny by any means. He's 6 foot at least, so he's over the 6 foot plateau, and like some of the guys K-State's trotted out there, but he has enough other things to kind of make up for it, to where he can still get open, make big plays, be explosive. The size gives you that chance to have a little bit more wiggle room to make big plays. So I think this is a good thing for K-State. And again, it's a depth thing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, they'd still like to add another receiver or two out of the portal, and maybe even guys that would pencil themselves in for more of a target share than even Tibbs would.
Yeah, I mean, this would probably be one of two at least transfer receivers added. Isaiah Hunter is a guy that we've talked about from Cal that is a big fish that's still out there for K-State, and that will be on campus Friday. They've hosted a few other transfer wide receivers. They have more transfer receiver visitors lined up. So they're really attacking the wide receiver position, and it seems to be that when you have this many guys that are out there, at some point, you're just going to take the first one to commit. And I wonder if Tibbs was just the first one to bite, because there was talk that there was just a lot of shuffling and kind of wondering who was going to rise to the top of K-State's board behind Hunter. And now you get Tibbs, and you're like, okay, now you at least have one in the fold. So now it's okay. Now let's go get Hunter, go get another guy that's a complementary piece. So I think that this just gives a lot more wiggle room as well. Looking at Tibbs's game log, 46 yards on 5 catches against Nebraska, 51 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown against Illinois, and had a catch for 28 yards against Ohio State. So he did play pretty well. And then 73 yards was a season high against Michigan State in the second to last game of the season for Purdue. So he did play pretty well during conference play. I mean, you look at his game log, a majority of his yards actually came in Big Ten play. So I think that kind of says something about him. And I think that this is one where in the transfer portal right now, you look at the wide receiver position. Mason, do you want to do a rundown here? Where are the top wide receivers going in the portal right now? Are they going to Big 12 schools?
No, they're going to ACC and SEC schools.
Yeah, they're going to ACC, SEC, and Big Ten schools.
ACC being your Florida States, and that's about
Clemson.
it. Yeah, maybe if Dabo wants to get a little bit more there, but yes, yeah.
The top guys are going to the SEC and Big Ten. So where do you find the guys on the margin? Because there's so many receivers in the transfer portal right now. I think it's the top position, maybe behind corner might be the only other position that is equal with wide receiver right now in terms of how many guys are in it. How do you get an advantage over some of the SEC, Big Ten schools, and even ACC schools that are going after these guys? You have to find the right scout. And if you can scout the receivers, because there's plenty that are out there. I mean, KU had 3 receivers this year that were pretty lightly recruited out of high school, and were all very, very good players. Jace Brown was really good at K-State this year, was lightly recruited out of high school. You can find guys out there if you can scout the right ones. And this is one where if you're going to make a move, you have to really trust your scout and really know what Tibbs can provide. And I think that he has a chance to be a big player because, again, K-State needed a jump ball receiver.
Yeah, and I go through and I look, you brought up Purdue and its production in Big Ten play. Purdue's scoring totals this year against their non-FCS opponent. They beat Indiana State 49-0. So Indiana State must be a terrible FCS school. They scored 7 points against Notre Dame. They scored 21 against Oregon State. They scored 10 against Nebraska, 6 against Wisconsin, and then an outlier. They scored 49 against Illinois and lost in overtime. scored 0 against Oregon, 20 and lost in overtime to Northwestern, another 0 against Ohio State, 10 against Penn State, 17 against Michigan State, and 0 against Indiana. There's just not a lot going on in that offense, and I think this is one of those that it's not a guarantee that it's going to work out in some big way for K-State, and it's not some big time difference maker, but it is one of those things that could add up, and I think is a good thing for their offense. And we know that K-State, this isn't going to be a one and done situation at receiver in the portal, so we'll see what's on tap next for K-State here.
I think that if you asked anyone right now if he is going to be your true like wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3, you would take the stat line that he had at Purdue this season in a heartbeat, I think. With how often the tight ends are going to be involved at K-State next year, you would probably take your wide receiver 3 getting like 350-ish yards and a couple scores.
Yeah, the numbers this year for Jaron Tibbs end up working out to being in the neighborhood of what Keegan Johnson had this year as the second leading receiver for K-State. Keegan had 29 catches for 359 yards. And again, that was an offense that did throw the ball slightly more than Purdue, to the tune of about 350 yards more than what Purdue put out on the total of the season.
And a much more competent quarterback than anybody Purdue was throwing out there too.
Yeah. And then you also can look and see that K-State had 3 receivers that ended up in a comparable spot, with Jaden Jackson 14 for 194, Trey Spivey 14 for 160, and Dante Cephas 13 for 142. The thought for K-State moving forward would be that you can consolidate some of those numbers, and you're not going to need 3 guys to basically aggregate to a wide receiver 2 for you. And Tibbs, I think, has already proven that you can rely on him a little bit more steadily coming in, especially if you're putting up those numbers on a team that only won 1 game this season. So we'll see how it looks for K-State moving forward, but they get their second edition of the transfer portal unless somebody else has slipped in under us after we took care of this. I don't think that will be the case, but the Wildcats still have a lot of work to do in the portal, and we will keep you all informed right here at K-State Online. So go to On3, find KStateOnline.com, get signed up if you're not a member, and start getting all the inside info so you have a good idea of who we might be doing a video on next for K-State in the transfer portal. But for Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thank you for watching and listening to K-State Online.